They call these things E-clips because they're an effing pain in my... Hey folks, Lucas here. Welcome back to Cropped Camera. If you've been following along up until now, you would have seen these major large components made. Now it's time to start hacking away at some of the smaller components. And we start with what you see here. These parts make up the tripod mount, camera strap mounts, and some of the Film Advance hardware. To make these parts, you'll need the following tools and materials. Got that? Good. So let's start by looking at the tripod mount. This part is something that I didn't have on my last camera. I designed the camera to be very small and lightweight and used mostly for shooting on the go. And honestly, I don't like to use a tripod unless I absolutely have to. But there are a few times when a tripod mount would have come in handy, so I decided to put the effort in to design and build this part. It's going to be carved out of a 1/2 inch stock I cut on the chop saw to these dimensions. I mark and punch the centers before jumping over to the lathe, where I pull out my favorite tool, the super glue Arbor. With the face cleaned up, I add a few drops of glue, and then use the center mark to set the part on the Arbor. I want the threads to be flush with the bottom of the camera, so I take the sides down, leaving a protrusion that can fit in a hole I'll later cut in the body. Next, I drill and tap the part with a 1/4-20 thread. I make sure to not drill all the way through the part because I don't want light getting in through this hole. Next, I simply turn down the sides so that they're nice and round. A few chamfers and a blowtorch later, and I'm free to move to the mill. This part is a little thick, so I'm using the mill to slim it down. I take the sides down until it's just larger than the cylinder. I now shift my focus to the body. I mark the appropriate location on the bottom and drill a 1/2 inch hole with an annular cutter. Next, I mark, drill, and tap 2 smaller holes needed to hold the mount in. I'm going to drill the holes through both the body and the mount at the same time. I don't want the threads in the body, so I drill a 2.5mm hole first, and then come along with a 3mm drill, but just go deep enough to get past the body. I then tap the hole with an M3 tap. I do this whole process twice, pop the body off the mill, and this part's now finished. Next, I tackle the camera strap mounts. For the last camera, I used a different method, and to be honest, I don't think it turned out very well. I used some aluminum wire bent at right angles and stuck into 2 holes in the main body. It works, but it's only a matter of time before the wire fails and the whole camera drops to the ground, possibly denting the ground or any other surface I may be standing on at the time. So I decided to take a different approach, and 2 seconds on a sticky note leaves me with this design. So let's get making. I'm first drilling a 3mm hole in this 1/4 inch steel rod. When it comes to turning, I think the order of operations is going to be quite important, so let's look again at that sticky note. Let's start by turning the part here. I'm thinking 8mm will be more than enough length. I'm not going to put threads on it just yet because I'm going to want to be able to flip the part around and grab onto the surface. This part isn't extremely critical as far as dimensions go, so I'm going to try and shape the whole thing by eye and see how it goes. And you know what, this thing turned out pretty darn good. I very quickly make a second one and cut the threads. Now I'll just drill a hole in the body, some nuts on the backside, and that's part 2 completed. Now we need to start tackling the Film Advance hardware. I'm not going to finish it all in this video, but I wanted to get far enough that I can at least align the top cap. First thing I'm going to do is make these steel bushings. These will mount in the main body and support the Film Advance knobs. They are turned out of a high tolerance steel bar, so I don't need to do the OD. I just had to worry about the ID, which is drilled to accept a 1/4 inch shaft. And on the outside, I had to cut 2 grooves for E-clips. To cut the grooves, I had to make a custom cutter, and I tell you what, this cutter took ages to grind. It's times like this I really wish I would invest in an angle grinder. Before moving on, I checked to see if the clips fit, and you know what it does? I cut a second groove 3mm behind the first and cut the part off. With 2 of these made, I start work on the film advance knobs. The 2 knobs will be a little smaller than the holes I made in the top cap. Through the center, I cut a 3mm hole that will be used to mount the knobs, and cut a 1/2 inch recess that will fit the bushings I just made. And lastly, I make 2 1/4 inch shafts with 3mm holes on both ends. Now I can start putting it all together. The bushings are held on by these 2 E-clips that go on the top and bottom of the aluminum plate. The shaft is connected to the knob with a machine screw and dropped through the bushing. I check to see that it spins freely without any hindrance. And now comes the moment of truth. I've carefully measured everything out so the top cap should slide right over these 2 knobs. And wow, look at that, a perfect fit. Because I now know the top cap fits perfectly, in a later episode I'll be able to trim down the sides to be flush with the body. And that's it for today. Join me next time when I attach the back door with a homemade hinge. If you've never made a hinge, it's quite fun and I recommend checking it out. If you've enjoyed this video and want to see more, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you'll be notified when I release videos. If you have any questions, comment them down below, and I'll try and help you out. If you have any other comments about what I'm doing, please leave them down below as well. And with that, I hope to see you next time.